Right now, somewhere, a politician is looking at a rising price and thinking the same thought. Just make it illegal. When your rent climbs, when your groceries cost more this month than they did last month, and the price at the pump jumps overnight. The simplest promise a government can make is also the oldest one in the world. We will cap the price. We will make it stop. It sounds like mercy. It is a trap. Every time a government has frozen prices to fight inflation, the same thing has happened. Not sometimes, not every time. The number on the shelf goes down, and then the thing on the shelf disappears. 80%. That is how much of Venezuela's basic food supply vanished from legal shelves after the government fixed the prices. In the United States, when prices were frozen, ranchers stopped shipping cattle and farmers drowned their own chickens rather than sell at a loss. In the year 301, a Roman emperor made charging too much a crime you could be executed for. Within a few years, his markets were empty. Same policy, same promise, not same result. Across 17 centuries, this is not an accident. No, it is not bad luck. It is not even corruption, though they will always blame corruption. It is a mechanism, a law as reliable as gravity, and once you see it, you will never unsee it. Here is the question this video is going to answer for you. If price controls have failed every single time, in every kind of economy, under every kind of ruler, why do governments keep reaching for them? Why are they reaching for them again, right now, in your country? To understand that, you have to go back, past Venezuela, past the United States, all the way back to slab of stone carved in the year 301, where the most powerful man on earth tried to command the price of bread, and lost. This is the money architect. Tell me in the comments, has a price control ever made something cheaper for you in real life? Or did the thing simply vanish from the shelf? Let us start with what almost everyone gets wrong. Here is what almost everyone gets wrong about prices. You think the price is the problem. It is not. The price is a message. When the price of something rises, it is telling you something true. That is telling you the thing is scarce. That is telling the people who make it to make more. It is telling the people who buy it to use less. A price is information. It is the nervous system of an entire economy, carrying signals between millions of strangers who will never meet and never speak a word to each other. Now imagine you do not like the message, so you ban it. That is all a price control is. You do not fix the scarcity. You silence the signal that was warning you about it. The fever is high, so you smash the thermometer. The room does not get any cooler. You have only blinded yourself to how hot it really is. Here is why the trap is so hard to escape. The relief is instant and visible. The damage is slow and hidden. On the day the cap is announced, the number on the price tag really does go down. You can see it with your own eyes. The shortage comes weeks later, quietly, one empty shelf at a time. By then, no one connects the empty shelf to the law that emptied it. The cause and the effect are pulled too far apart in time for most people to ever link them. This is the trap, and it has caught some of the most powerful people who ever lived. Because price controls feel righteous. When ordinary families cannot afford bread, capping the price of bread looks like compassion. Looks like the government finally taking the side of the weak against the greedy. Rome fell into this trap at its lowest moment. By the late 3rd century, the Roman Empire was bleeding. Decades of civil war. What? Plague. An edie? Emperors murdered by their own soldiers, sometimes after only a few months on the throne. And underneath all of it, a slower poison. The Roman coin, the denarius, had been quietly hollowed out. Each new minting carried less silver than the one before it. The rulers had been clipping the people's money for generations to pay for armies and walls and bread. The result was inflation. Brutal, grinding inflation. Prices doubled and then doubled again. A soldier's wage bought less every single year. The money was dying, and everyone could feel it dying in their hands. In the year 284, a soldier named Diocletian seized the throne and decided to fix the empire by force of will. He rebuilt the government, split the empire to make it easier to rule. And then he turned his attention to the prices. He did not ask why prices were rising. He already had his answer ready. Greed dread. That answer is exactly where the disaster begins. Here is the part nobody tells you about Diocletian. He did not just suggest prices. He commanded them. In the year 301, he issued the edict on maximum prices. I had it carved into stone and posted across the empire so that no one could ever claim they had not seen it. The scale of it was staggering. The edict set a maximum legal price for more than 1,000 separate goods and services. Grain, wine, not olive oil, meat, clothing, the wage of a farm laborer, the fee of a teacher, the price of a single haircut. If it could be bought or sold anywhere in the Roman world, Diocletian put a ceiling on it, and the penalty for breaking that ceiling was not a fine. It was death. Think about how serious that is. The most powerful state in the ancient world was willing to execute a man for selling an egg too expensively. Diocletian went further still. I decreed that the buyer who paid too much could be executed alongside the seller. And if a merchant simply refused to sell, if he held his goods back rather than lose money on them, that too was a crime worth dying for. Now ask yourself what you would do in his shoes. You are a baker. It costs you 10 coins to make a single loaf of bread, because the grain and the firewood and the labor have all gone up in price. The emperor announces that you may only sell that loaf for 8 coins. Every loaf you sell, you lose 2 coins. Every single one. What do? You do not sell at a loss. No one does. Not for long. Oh, you stop baking. You close the shop. You take your grain and you sell it in secret, in an alley, at the real price, to whoever can quietly pay it. Or you simply abandon the trade and go do something else with your life. Now multiply that one baker by every producer in the entire empire. That is what actually happened. The goods did not get cheaper. They vanished. They disappeared from the legal markets completely. The official price was 8 coins, but there was nothing to buy at 8 coins anywhere. Black market exploded in the shadows, where the true price climbed higher than ever, because now there was risk and fear and scarcity all baked into it. The edict itself opened with a furious sermon. It denounced the greed of wicked merchants and speculators. It accused them of robbing the helpless public into beggary. Diocletian had decided before a single price was even listed, that the villain was the seller, not the silver he himself had stripped out of the coins. The seller. We know how it ended, because a Roman writer named Lactantius lived through it and wrote it down. And he recorded that the edict caused bloodshed over small and cheap things. Wrote that goods vanished from sale, and that after much killing, the law was simply abandoned. Let that sink in. The most ambitious price control in ancient history collapsed within a few years, not because the enforcement was too weak. The enforcement was death. It collapsed because no law, no army, and no emperor on earth can force a man to sell at a loss forever. This is the mechanism. Write it down somewhere. When you cap a price below the cost of making the thing, you do not lower the cost. You simply remove the reason to make it at all. And here is what should frighten you. This is not ancient. This exact thing happened in the modern world, in a country with computers and universities and elections, less than a single human lifetime ago. Notch. Picture the most advanced economy on the face of the earth, universities full of brilliant economists, government sitting on mountains of data. This is the United States of America, not ancient Rome. And it did exactly what Diocletian did. On the 15th of August in 1971, President Richard Nixon went on television, and he interrupted a popular program to address the entire nation. And he announced that he was freezing all wages and all prices across the United States for 90 days. Inflation was rising. The public was anxious and angry, and Nixon, against the direct advice of his own economists, decided to make the rising prices illegal. The reaction was instant applause. The stock market jumped the very next day. People felt that someone was finally in charge of the chaos. For the average person at home, a freeze felt like strength. It felt like the government finally meant business. One man was not impressed. Milton Friedman, who would later win the Nobel Prize in economics, told Nixon plainly that it would fail. I predicted the controls would end in utter failure and that the oppressed inflation would come bursting back out into the open. And he was treated like a pessimist. Odds were simply correct. Here is what happened. The exact same thing that happened in Rome. When the price of cattle was frozen, but the cost of feed kept on rising, the ranchers sat down and did the math. Stopped shipping their cattle to the market. Why ship an animal just to sell it at a loss? Utuntai. Farmers drowned their own chickens rather than raise them to be sold below cost. Tahoti. Shoppers walked into their supermarkets and found the shelves stripped bare. Read that again slowly. In the wealthiest nation in human history, in the 1970s, ordinary people emptied the stores, and farmers destroyed their own animals. Not because of a war, not because of a drought or a plague, because of a piece of paper that fixed a number. And there was a second wound that cut even deeper. Petroleum stayed under controls long after the first freeze was lifted. When the oil shock hit in late 1973 and the world price of oil tripled, the American price was still held down by law. The result was the image that defined the decade. Mile-long lines of cars at the gas stations, drivers waiting for hours, pumps running dry by mid-morning. The fuel had not disappeared from the earth. It had disappeared from the places where the law said it must be sold cheap. The freeze was supposed to last 90 days. Instead, it dragged on through phase after phase, freeze after freeze, for nearly 3 years. And when it was finally abandoned in 1974, inflation did not stay down. It came roaring back higher than before, climbing past 12%. The pain had only been delayed. It came back with interest. One of Nixon's own officials later admitted that the only thing the whole disaster had proven was that wage and price controls are not the answer. But it gets worse, because the world refused to learn the lesson. And the next country to try it would not get off with empty shelves for a few short years. It would collapse entirely. And this is where the story stops being history and becomes something happening right now. Venezuela, a country sitting on top of the largest proven oil reserves on the entire planet, richer in raw resources than almost anywhere else on Earth. And its people stood in lines for hours just to buy toilet paper. How does that happen? The same way it always happens. Starting in 2003, under President Hugo Chávez, and then continuing under his successor Nicolas Maduro, Venezuela fixed the prices of basic goods. Milk, rice, not by plur, soap, metal cooking oil. The government set the price low in the name of the poor to protect families from greedy companies. It is the exact language Diocletian used, the exact same language, 17 centuries apart, almost word for word. And the exact same thing happened. When the government set the price of milk far below what it actually cost to produce, the farmers stopped producing milk. They switched to making things the government did not control. The shelves that should have held cheap, regulated rice held expensive, unregulated rice instead, at 30 times the price. The cheap goods did not become affordable. They became imaginary. Pay attention to this number. By the time the crisis reached its peak, roughly 80% of basic goods were simply not available in the stores on any given day. 8 out of every 10 things you needed. Gone. Prices, by one account, rose to 9 times their earlier level within just a few years. What technology? The PNUM to fingerprinting shoppers at the checkout to stop them from buying too much. People queued before dawn outside half-empty supermarkets, praying that a delivery might come. And what did the government say? It said exactly what Diocletian said. It blamed greed. It blamed hoarders. It blamed an economic war waged by evil businessmen and speculators out to sabotage the nation. Maduro publicly accused private companies of deliberately cutting their production to destroy the country from within. He could not admit the truth. The truth was that he had ordered them to sell at a loss, and they had stopped. That is not sabotage. That is arithmetic. And the shortages bred their own madness. Because the regulated goods were so cheap and so rare, people bought every roll of toilet paper and every tube of toothpaste the moment a shipment landed. Not technology. Shelves were stripped bare before the workers could even finish stocking them. The government's answer was not to free the prices. It was more control. It set up rationing committees and assigned families fixed days when they were allowed to shop. The cure for the failure of control was always more control. The black market took over completely, just as it had in Rome. The connected and the wealthy always found a way to get what they needed. The poor, the very people the controls were meant to protect, were left with empty shelves and endless lines. This is the cruelest part of the entire pattern. The policy is always sold as protection for the weak, and every single time it is the weak who get crushed by it. Now you have seen it 3 times. Rome, not America. Venezuela, different centuries, different flags, different languages on the tablets and the broadcasts and the decrees. One identical result. So the real question is not whether price controls fail. We know that they fail. The question is why intelligent people, with all of this history laid out in front of them, keep choosing them anyway. Here is what most people miss. Price controls do not survive because politicians are stupid. Many of them know the history perfectly well. They survive because they work, just not at the thing they claim to do. Price control is not really an economic policy at all. It is a performance, and it solves a very real problem for the person in power. The problem of looking helpless while everyone is angry. When prices are rising and the public is furious, a leader has 2 honest options, and both of them are painful. Tell the public the truth, that the rising prices come from his own government printing and spending and debasing the money. Or he can do the slow, boring, invisible work of actually fixing the supply. Neither of those things wins him any applause this week. So there is always a third option. Find a villain. Diocletian blamed evil traders. Nixon blamed profiteers. Maduro blamed economic saboteurs. In every single case, the ruler took the thing his own policies had caused, the inflation, not pinned it on the greed of the people who sell you your food. Then he rode in to the rescue with a dramatic, visible, decisive action. Not a freeze, by technology. A new law. It does not matter that it will fail in 6 months. The applause is now. The election is now. The headline is now. Nixon froze the prices and won re-election in a landslide the very next year. The bill came due much later for someone else to pay. And notice who actually benefits while it lasts. Not you. Who benefit are the ones with connections. The ones who can reach the black market. The officials who control the rationing and decide who gets what. Price control does not abolish scarcity. It just changes who gets to decide who eats. Moves have that power away from the open market, where you have a voice with your money, and hands it to the state, where you have no voice at all. And do not miss who quietly wins inside the wreckage. Shortage does not make a good disappear from the universe. It just hands the power to ration it to whoever controls the supply. The official who decides which store gets the shipment. The soldier at the checkpoint. The cousin of the minister. Under a free price, the thing goes to whoever values it most and is willing to pay. Under a cap, it goes to whoever has the right friends. That is not a side effect. For a certain kind of ruler, that is a feature. It turns bread into a favor and a favor into loyalty. That is the deeper truth. Our price control is a transfer of power dressed up as a gift. Not by technology, they are protecting you from the seller. They are quietly making you dependent on them. Once you understand that, you understand why this keeps coming back. Not despite the failures. The failure was never the bug. The people in power, the spectacle, was always the entire point. So why does any of this matter to you today in your own life? Because the same temptation is rising again. Contra in your country. No, right now. When inflation hit recently, listen to the language that came back. Price gouging, greedy corporations, calls to crack down, to cap, to ban the high prices. It is the oldest script in the world, and it is being read aloud again, almost word for word. It is seductive. When your grocery bill jumps, and you feel powerless and squeezed, a politician promising to cap those prices sounds like the only person on your side. And maybe you cheer for him, but now you know what that cheer is actually buying. You are not voting for cheaper bread. You are voting for the empty shelf. You are not punishing the seller. You are removing his reason to sell anything to you at all. The price tag may say less. There will simply be nothing left standing behind it. Look at rent control in the cities where it exists. The rent is capped, and what happens next? The new apartments stop being built. The existing ones slowly decay, because the owner can no longer afford to repair them. A lucky few get a cheap home for life. Everyone else waits years for a vacancy that never seems to come. Same mechanism, same victims. Every time. You have seen the smaller versions of this already, even if you did not name them. The gas station with a sign that says, "out of fuel during a crisis," while the station across the border has plenty at a higher price. The concert ticket you cannot buy at face value because it's sold out in seconds, yet sits available on a resale site for triple. Cap the price and the line replaces the price tag. You no longer pay with money. You pay with hours of your life, or with the right connections. Someone always pays. The cost never vanishes. It only changes its shape and hides. This is the discipline this channel asks of you. When the next crisis comes, and a leader steps forward to offer to make the high prices illegal, do not ask whether it sounds kind. Ask the only question that actually matters. If you cap the price below the cost, who is going to make the thing? Because if the honest answer is no one, then kindness is exactly how the shelves go empty. Let us return to where we began. That slab of stone, carved in the year 301, where an emperor tried to command the price of bread. Remember the question we planted at the very start. Why do governments keep reaching for a policy that has failed every single time? Now you have your answer. They reach for it because it was never meant to fix the economy. It was meant to fix the politics. The shelves do not empty by accident. They empty by law. And the law is passed not to feed you, but to be seen feeding you. The price was never the disease. The price was only ever the thermometer. Diocletian smashed it. Nixon smashed it. Maduro smashed it. And in every case the fever raged on, hidden now, deadlier now, while the people were told to be grateful for the silence. Rising price is a hard message to hear, but it is a true one. It tells you to produce more, to buy less, to adapt while there is still time. Silence that message, and you do not escape the scarcity. You only walk straight into it with your eyes closed. The next time you hear the promise, that simple, merciful promise to just make the high prices illegal, you will know exactly what you are looking at. It is not compassion. It is a camera pointed at an empty shelf, with someone standing in front of it, smiling. If this changed the way you see the prices around you, subscribe, because the pattern is not finished. It is only waiting for the next crisis to be invited back in. History does not repeat, But if you do not understand it, it will crush you all the same.